I call the honourable member for Herbert.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. My question is to the Minister for Defence. Will the Minister detail the nature of the deployment of additional Australian troops and personnel to Iraq as part of Australia's efforts to fight the Daesh death cult?
I call the honourable Minister for Defence.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, and I thank the member for Herbert for his question. And I know how much that defence matters to him in his electorate, being the representative of some 6,000 Australian Defence Force personnel who live in Townsville and around that area. He's a wonderful advocate for those members of the Australian Defence Force and for their families in this place. Madam Speaker, the Australian contribution to the Building Partner Capacity program of 300 approximately Australian Defence Force personnel will be joined by about 100 from the New Zealand Defence Forces, involves the next phase of attempts by international coalition forces along with the Iraqis to disrupt, degrade and hopefully ultimately defeat the Daesh forces. The troops that will be drawn for this deployment to Baghdad or Taji near Baghdad will largely come from Brisbane's 7th Brigade, and I know that the member for Ryan and the member for Brisbane have many of those Defence Force personnel living in their electorates, and we wish them well in their preparation and training over the coming weeks prior to the deployment to Iraq in May. Madam Speaker, the safety and the security of Australian Defence Force personnel serving in missions overseas is of utmost importance, and that's why, as part of this total deployment of some 400 ADF and New Zealand personnel, there will be a very strong and significant force protection component, because that's important to ensure that this training mission is one which is done as best we can to alleviate the risks to the safety and the security of those personnel involved. They will be based at Taji, which is a large military base about some 25 kilometres northwest of Baghdad. The size of this base measures about 7 by 6 kilometres, so it's almost half a marathon to actually go right around the perimeter of this base. It's a very large area. There are already some 500 US troops at Taji at the present time. Our world-class soldiers, members of the regular forces, will be involved in advanced training. They will be behind the wire. They will not be involved in direct combat, and that's consistent with the existing deployment of personnel to Baghdad. So this is in addition to the Air Force commitment of the 6 FA-18s, the KC-30 refueller and the E-7 Wedgetail, which to date, through the combination of their efforts and the Iraqi efforts and coalition forces, have reclaimed some 700 square kilometres from Daesh. This is a commitment to stability and security in Iraq and the Middle East. It's part of our first priority in this country for the safety and security of our citizens, because if we can disrupt and degrade and ultimately defeat Daesh, we're not just adding to the security of the Middle East, we're adding to security right throughout the world.